So I'm not saying that, what I did in this video was completely pointless and stupid and was a complete waste of money, but it 100% was. Okay, so for the 70 people who regularly watch my channel for some reason, some of you might know that I have been on a journey to find ways to just store all the stuff and data that I have, or in other words, just me becoming a data hoarder. And it started from humble beginnings with me just JBotting a bunch of hard drives with macOS, then raiding a bunch of hard drives within macOS, then me just getting a Synology NAS and filling that with a bunch of hard drives and raiding them all together, which at that point would be perfectly fine for pretty much almost anyone. I have nearly 70 terabytes in that NAS, and over the 6 months since I made that video, it has worked completely fine. But the only issue is that while the transfer speeds are pretty solid, it gets about 400 megabytes up and down from the NAS. The main issue is that video editing off the NAS, it sucks. It's slow as hell. Which, yeah, I was kind of expecting because, I mean, it's just a bunch of hard drives, and hard drives aren't great for video editing in the first place, but still. And it also doesn't help that the computer inside the Synology NAS is slower than my goddamn phone. Now, if that was the only issue I was having, that would be completely fine, because I can always just move to external SSDs to edit all my videos off of. The other issue is that this NAS also acts as my Plex server, and while it just might be me being an idiot and I just don't know what the hell I'm actually doing, it's slow. And I'm not even trying to transcode a 4K video of HDR or anything. I'm just trying to play back 1080p content, and it struggles with that, and I don't know why. So now it's gone to the point where I just got a Dell micro PC to act as my Plex head server, and it just draws all the video content over the network. You can always just stream it. God fucking damn. But nevertheless, over the last 4 months or so, I've been slowly planning out another goddamn NAS because unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I have fallen down a hole of data hoarding. And I have to admit, I don't think I ever want to get out. So that being said, this is the story of how I built an all SSD NAS because I'm just plain fucking stupid. So this all really started when I found some relatively cheap listing for old Dell rack servers on eBay, and after a couple weeks of just staring at the eBay listing, I finally decided, screw it, and I finally pulled the trigger on a Dell R720 for about $300. And as for the specs, it was originally supposed to come with dual Xeon E5 2650 V2s, 64 gigs of RAM, and a default 1 gigabit network NIC. But to my surprise, it actually came with dual Xeon E5 2680 V2s and a 10 gigabit network NIC, which is really cool, but it also sucks because now I just have a spare 10 gigabit network NIC that I just have laying around because I was originally going to put that into the server, but now it came with one, so now I just have a spare 10 gigabit network NIC laying around and no one really cares, so let's move on. And now the next thing I upgraded was having more RAM. Now 64 gigabytes would have probably been completely fine for my needs, but I am going to be running a true NAS scale on this, and ZFS does love having more RAM, and DDR3 ECC RAM is shockingly cheap right now, so $55 later I now have 320 gigs of RAM in my server. I can already feel the comments coming in. But moving on, I had also bought a Dell H710 RAID card that was flashed into IT mode, so I didn't have to mess around creating a virtual disk for all my drives, because the stock RAID card in the Dell R720, you actually had to create a virtual disk for each and every single drive in order for the server to actually see that it exists. But since this card has been flashed into IT mode, it allows me to just put in a drive into the server, and the server just sees it without me having to create a virtual disk. So, less maintenance. Also, I decided to throw in my old GTX 1050 Ti in there, just because I might be resetting on my Plex server to run off disk, and I didn't really have any other use for it, so might as well throw it in for the hell of it, I don't really know. Which now leads us into the fun part, the large amount of SSDs that I bought for this project that I didn't even need to, because this project was completely and utterly stupid and did not need to exist. And what I bought was 14 used Samsung PM865 1.92 terabyte enterprise SSDs that I got for $43 each. And since the R720 has 16 drive bays, I just threw in some 2 terabyte SSDs I had in my main PC. Now some of you might be wondering, why the hell did you buy used drives? Well, the main reason was because, well, as I said before, these are enterprise SSDs, and according to their spec sheet, they have a write endurance of about 2800 TVW. And after checking all the drives with disk info, all of them have about 97% health left, so I do feel pretty safe using them. And it's not that I'm going to be constantly writing data to them every day. I just store all my video projects that I made during that year onto them and then move them to my Synology after the year is done and then start all over again. So honestly, I'm pretty comfortable reusing all these drives in a personal storage NAS because, I mean, I'm not doing any professional work that, my livelihood depends on, so it should be fine. probably. And as for the boot drive, I'm just using 2 Intel Optane drives mainly because of redundancy. Also, I got both of them for pretty cheap, about $15 each, so not bad, not great. They're pretty reliable. Let's move on. So after putting everything together, it doesn't boot into TrueNAS. So apparently, I kind of made a small oversight in the fact that this server is so goddamn old it can't boot from NVMe drives. So then I had to install Clover onto a USB drive and then tell the server, hey, the Intel drives are your boot media, so, you know, maybe boot off of that, maybe, pretty please? Which, yeah, on paper should work perfectly fine, except the fact that I was in a constant stage of wrestling with the goddamn BIOS to get it to change the fucking boot over, so the Clover USB had priority to boot first, but every time it didn't work, I had to wait 3 goddamn minutes to get back into the BIOS to change it again. So nevertheless, 3 hours later of me struggling with this goddamn thing, I finally managed to get it to boot into TrueNAS. And luckily, everything works! All the drives showed up, like, everything just magically worked, I guess, because sure, why not? I then proceeded to put all the drives into a pool with 2 VDAs of 8 drives each running RAID D2, which in the end gave me about 19.7 terabytes of usable storage. Which, yeah, doesn't really sound all that impressive, but you also gotta know, it's an all SSD array, so like, it's pretty cool in my opinion. So here's a question that nobody asked. How fast is it?
I mean, I think it's pretty fast. I don't know.
Now, it's definitely not the fastest thing in the world. These are SATA drives, so keep that in mind. But I mean, after doing some initial testing, I am getting very close to saturating the 10 gigabit link between my computer and the server. On average, getting about 700 to 800 megabytes up and down, which is, you know, pretty damn good. And another thing is power consumption. At idle, the server pulls about maybe 90 to 100 watts, and at full load, it pulls about 200 watts, which is not great, but it's certainly not bad at all. And for the last 3 weeks that I had this running, it's been pretty solid. And I'm sure there are a number of things in TrueNAS I did not properly set up that could be costing me performance, but I'm still pretty new to this, so any TrueNAS and or ZFS people who are just foaming at the comments right now, just deal with it, I guess. I don't really care. But in the end, for just under $1,100, which now saying this out loud is really starting to hit me at the fact that I spent that much on something that was pretty pointless and stupid, and I could have spent that money on other things like gacha rolls. But for a nearly 20 terabyte all SSD NAS that is also redundant, mind you, with 320 gigabytes of RAM and 20 CPU cores, in my opinion, that's not really all that bad. Am I coping really hard at this and trying to justify this to myself? Yes, but that's exactly what it is. Now, was there a cheaper way to do this? Yeah, it's called don't fucking do this, dipshit.
I mean, yeah, he kind of has a point.